Welcome to Alive in Writing, a podcast on troubleshooting life as a writer.
I'm Shatona Having.
I'm April Heyman.
And I'm C.R. Rowanson. We're here.
We're alive.
And we're writing. And, we just finished the last episode where we were talking about doing our best and everything, and we were segueing in, to today. So we realized that they are actually rather related. Today we're talking about boundaries. And with boundaries and doing your best, there is a definite correlation there.
Yeah, how so?
I was going to... Wait a minute. She was throwing that at you. This is on you. Go!
That's no fun, though. Yeah, we were talking, because in the last episode, one of the things we talked about was priority management, and that's going to need to be some whole episodes on itself.
Yeah.
That's a whole nightmare, but specifically, I was talking about, I talked about work and changing how much energy can go into different things and accepting how your best will change depending on how much energy you put in. And the boundaries is how you determine how much energy you want to put in. Right. So you have to set the right boundaries so that you know what's going to go where, and that will influence what your best really is. So, for the martial arts, one of the boundaries I had to set was I am protecting my emotional and intellectual energy for writing.
Right. So you're setting a boundary.
That was the boundary I had to set, and I had to protect my writing, and unfortunately that meant passing a little bit on something I deeply love.
Yeah, and it isn't that interesting, though, because we tend to think of boundaries as something we do because this other thing is negative. Mm-hmm. We want to keep the negative out of our lives, but boundaries don't have to be against negative things. We can set boundaries for things that are positive. I mean, even with like family and friends and our own writing.
Yes.
We can have boundaries. This writing cannot encroach into other areas of my life, or other areas can't encroach. You know what I mean? So it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. You had to set a boundary that pushes back something you love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boundaries aren't always about saying no. Sometimes boundaries are how to say yes.
Yeah, and actually, this is way early. We'll cover it more in the spotlight. There's a book that one of my therapists actually pointed me towards, and one of the things they talk about it in the book is that boundaries have two purposes. They need to be permeable, because you want to set the boundaries up to keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff in, but it has to be permeable so that the bad stuff already inside, can leave, and good stuff from outside can come in. I thought it was
so kind
cool.
of like a wall with a gate.
Yeah.
So that you could, because a wall will keep out the bad, but you've got to be able to get the bad out. You got to be able to expel,
That's pretty much what they went to. But what's another example of some boundaries that we have to set?
So I have a good one. One of the boundaries I have to set is between myself and my children, because we homeschool, so I'm here all the time. And they're used to being able to talk to me at any time during the day. But as writing becomes more and more important, and I focus more on that as well as some of my work that I do, I had to figure out a way to have them not come into my office and talk to me about something. And it's not, I spend part of my morning with them working on homework. So it's not usually stuff about homework. It's more like, can we play video games, or can I have lunch now, or I've got to go to school, or, to class or whatever. And things like that is...
Can we jump off the roof?
Yeah, that's never okay, by the way.
Don't tell Ethan, you'll break his heart. Ethan, parkour. Remind me to tell you about this. Yeah. Just saying.
Parkour.
So what I did recently was I took a whiteboard, and every day I put my hours on it.
Nice.
So I have my morning hours are usually from like 9:30 to about 12:30, and then from 1:30 I take a lunch break, and then 1:30 to 4:30, and I adjust it as needed. But the kids know that they have me until a certain time, so if they have questions, they can ask me during those times. And then I leave a little pen there, so if they have a question that they need to ask me, they can write it on the board.
That's really clever.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, and it's worked so far.
Yay!
I know.
Because you were really concerned about that. I remember that.
I actually want to back up a step because we've been talking about this a lot, like between recordings, and I don't know if we actually covered why boundaries are so important. Did we talk about that?
I don't think we did.
I mean, we kind of introed into some boundaries we have set up, but like, why are boundaries important?
Well, because there are always limits in life, period.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you cannot do and be and everything all at once, all the time, all by yourself. You just can't. It's not possible. So there have to be boundaries, or you'll never get anything done, and it's actually very unhealthy.
So I guess we did cover it, just not in as many words. It's for protecting what you need to protect, and then I guess, like I said
defending what you need to defend, and
keeping the bad out, keeping the good in, yada yada yada. Okay, never mind. We did answer that.
Yay! But gee, we're better than we thought. Leave us to our delusions.
Oh man. So what's another boundary that you guys put in place, or somewhere you really need to work on boundaries? Because
I
know you were struggling with that, April, and I'm really glad that you're making progress with that. That was a really great idea.
That is really cool.
And I'm glad. I think the next boundary I have to set is on Flex Fridays. My husband has every other Friday off, so that's not a day off for me, but it is a day off for him. And so we end up I end up not doing the things I need to do because I'm running around with him and doing the things that he needs to do. And nothing gets done on my plate. And I have deadlines. So
and your plate doesn't empty just because
he's got the day off. Yeah.
Right.
So it's something that he and I have to work on. So that's the next boundary probably that I have to work on.
And I have no boundaries.
You have no boundaries?
I really don't.
Which is a problem by itself.
Which it is. And it's really interesting because, again, this is a re-recording. The first time we discussed this, remember how I told you guys about Denny's and how I had to quit going to Denny's all the time?
Yeah.
Because I literally went to Denny's every night of the week for 18 months or so. And aside from the grotesque expense, I've just done the tax receipts on that. We're talking thousands of dollars here. Besides that, it got to the point where I got to know everybody so well that they would come over and it became the Dr. Phil booth. Booth 14 became the therapy booth. And they would, the servers and the busboys, and they would all come and sit down and they would, hash out their problems. And there goes my writing because I'm helping this person now.
That's because you refuse to be even slightly more prickly.
Yeah, I won't because I've always said, and I mean it, that people are more important.
Yeah.
People are always more important. But I had to actually stop going because I knew I would not. And it was interesting because I felt bad about that. I have a different place that I work and I still go there once a week. And I remember thinking, I need to put up a boundary. And I realized after all this that actually going to this other place was my boundary. It was a boundary. I created a boundary that I'm comfortable with. But if I hadn't been that person, if I hadn't been the one who said, people are more important, you're in front of me, you need me, I'm going to give this up. One of the servers had a horrible accident. Her car was actually hit by a train.
Yeah.
Destroyed the car. And she was so shaken up. When I got down to my alternate place to work, I flipped up my laptop and she says, "Help, can you come?" That would never, ever have happened. She would not have felt comfortable asking a customer to come help her if I hadn't been willing to listen to her all that time. And you know what? I am not willing to make that change.
Well, and that's a boundary you just made.
I made a boundary. People are more important. They stay more important. But I also, to protect other issues in my life, I'm sticking with working at the lighthouse.
Right.
I write there all night. It's just a prayer room. I go there all night. I'm there in case someone comes in. So that will interrupt my writing time, but that's okay. How often are people going to come in at 3 a.m. to pray? It doesn't really happen very much.
Not too much.
But it's there. And I chose to have both.
Right.
And it worked. But it was interesting because I put a boundary in there that I didn't realize it did until after it was all done.
And that's really cool because once you're aware of boundaries, you start seeing them everywhere. You start seeing some of your own boundaries. You start being able to identify other people's boundaries.
Right.
And it actually makes it easier to interact with people.
And be respectful of them.
Yeah.
If I can see your boundaries, I won't ask you to breach them.
Yeah.
Unless it's an emergency. And if you know me well and you know that I am saying, can you help me with this I would never, I mean, if you go to church every Sunday morning at 8:00 and I call you at 7 and say, I need you now. If you never miss church ever and I call at 7 say, I need you now, you know that it's an emergency. You know that it matters. And so I can be respectful of your boundaries and you can realize that this is a time to flex.
Right. Yeah. And this is not
that's not a breach as much as a knock.
Right. Yeah. Now, are there negative boundaries? Because we've been talking a lot about positive boundaries and pushing out the bad and bringing in the good. But what about those boundaries that we have that are negative? Like they keep in the bad and they push out the good. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
I think I know what you're talking about. Because I would say that probably everybody has those to some degree where we work too closely with our own, like, okay, my writing. I can become so inward focused in my good thing, writing is a good thing, that I can make that time all about myself so much that I'm putting up boundaries against things that are actually really important.
Okay. So I think I understand what you're saying. And in my logic, I would argue there isn't necessarily such thing as a bad boundary.
Okay.
But you can have a boundary that is too inflexible or is in the wrong place.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does.
I can follow that.
Okay.
Yeah, so like for me, one that I had to readjust is I am not on the level of Shatona where people are more important, period. I'm not at that level. But I did reach a point where I have people in town, they're good friends, and I went to an event that people were having a movie night, and I realized I hadn't seen some of these people in 3 months. And I was like, this is not okay. They're fine with it because they are respecting what I love and what is important to me. They're being good friends and respecting this boundary I put up, but I made it too inflexible. And I'm putting too much into writing and not allowing time for these people to be in my life.
Right. These people that you care about. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had to make a gate.
Yeah, right. You built a gate, and it isn't that what you said something about taking Fridays off or something?
Yeah, that was another one. Is just working too hard, taking 1 day a week off to allow recovery time.
Right.
So I guess that was a case where I was being too inflexible.
Right. And boundaries come and go, by the way.
Right.
You can have a boundary that's part of your personality. But I think as life changes, you need to make sure that your boundaries change along with it.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Because
you redraw.
Right. So like when you had when you created the Friday rule, right? Where you didn't do anything. That's a new boundary.
Yes, that is.
And you may outgrow it and you may not, but it's a new boundary. It's not like something you had since childhood, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and even with your martial arts, you had to draw a boundary line there that you will probably move.
That's true.
To include it someday. But right now, you've separated it for a time.
Yeah, sometimes you got to put them up and sometimes you got to tear them down. But that's a good point. I know originally when we talked about this, one of the things we wanted to discuss, or we discussed a lot, was volunteering. And that was setting boundaries for your time.
Yeah.
Because recently, all three of us had been having some problems with volunteering.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it's not that we don't like volunteering, by the way. We do.
That's part of the problem, is that we do. If I didn't like it, I would be less inclined, because I tend to volunteer before you have a chance to ask.
Or before, in my case, before I check my schedule. Oops.
Right.
Oops, yeah. We did that a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I actually had to make a big boundary this school year where we're not doing something that the boys really enjoy because I couldn't do the volunteering, and I just couldn't do it. It was just very stressful. And I said, not this year, guys. I'm sorry.
That's a good point. So should we talk a little bit about some writing specific boundaries? But before that,
we have I know we have the spotlight, actually.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay, so go do that first, and then we'll talk about the writing.
And this is good. I almost wish we could have started with the spotlight, because that's where all of this came from. It's a book called Boundaries: When to Say Yes and When to Say No, or no.
How to Say No.
I think it's When to Say Yes and How to Say No, by Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And again, that was recommended by counselor therapist I was seeing at the time. And I started reading it, and that's where a lot of these ideas came from. And as soon as I started seeing that, a lot of these things started falling into place, and it made so much sense. Really wanted to talk about it. So you should go check out the book. I will warn you that they are very religious, and it shows a lot in their writing. So they have a lot of stuff. They will be referencing passages in the Bible and Psalms and things like that. So if that bothers you, this may not be the book for you. I'm sure there are follow-up books because this was a huge bestseller. I'm sure there is stuff similar to this one. This is just the one I was recommended. And I haven't had a huge problem with it. It's been a little frustrating at times, but it's been really good so far.
Okay.
Right.
So,
yeah. And it's been highly recommended. When I first heard about the book like 10 years ago, I remember thinking, yeah, this doesn't sound biblical. How is this a Christian book? Because it sounds just by the word boundaries sounds very self-serving. Right. And it is self-serving, but what your motivation is really what it boils down to.
And that's that's something they talk about, which is important. The fact that boundaries aren't selfish if you set them correctly.
Right.
They can be. They can be incredibly selfish if you're not careful. And that's where, like what Shatona was talking about, it doesn't feel Christian or whatever to be setting up these limitations on volunteering for your church or helping the poor or whatever, but they're important. There is a line between selfish and, preservation.
Right. Well, and like Dr. Richard Swenson said in Margin, he said, we can't be all things to all men, all at once, all the time, all by ourselves.
That's just exhausting saying that.
Right? Yes. I get worn out.
Yeah.
But, you take that scripture, be all things to all men, well, he says that what we tend to try to do is to be all things to all men, all at once, all the time, all by ourselves. And when you think about it that way, we do try to do that. And it's crazy. And this book seems to be like a balance for that idea.
It seems to we do that a lot in the United States. I'm
not sure it's a worldwide issue. I don't know. I have no idea.
The U.S. has got problems.
Yeah.
Every country has problems. This is just one of ours.
Yeah. And this is actually really cool because we've been doing some planning for Chapter 2. I'm going to go ahead and just
go ahead. It's fine.
This for Chapter 2. One of the things we're going to do next year is we're going to take some classic writing advice and we're going to do a little more show, don't tell. And we'll talk about more of this in Chapter 2. But all three of us are going to read the book and dig into it a little bit and give you more information about the pros and cons of this book and how we're applying it in our life. But yeah, I think that's the first episode we have planned for next year's.
It's like the first or second one,
yeah.
I think.
So we'll talk more about this, but that is coming and it's going to be cool.
It's going to be awesome.
You're going to enjoy it.
It's going to be really good.
So real quick, in what little time we have left, what are some writing-specific boundaries? Shatona, you talked about having to set a physical boundary.
Right.
So that you could get your writing done.
I had a time boundary, but I also have another boundary. And my other boundary is what I write. Now,
interesting.
Okay, so some people, because I'm a Christian, I don't necessarily write explicitly Christian fiction. This is really hard for me to explain. I don't.
You don't write evangelistic fiction.
I do not write evangelistic fiction, right? So.
But I'm guessing your boundaries still holding to your values.
Oh, Christian worldview.
Gotcha.
And I also have this thing where I say, if my child cannot read over my shoulder, and if he reads over my shoulder and it scars him for life, I can't write it.
Which is why I'm not allowed to write at April's house.
That's probably true.
We didn't know this until just now.
Not that my three boys wouldn't enjoy it immensely. But I have this thing where I was like, there's no sex and try not to swear too much. If it's swearing is part of the character and it makes sense in the story, I'll do it, but not gratuitously, not gratuitous violence. And that's my boundary. And if my readers don't like it, well, then they're not my readers.
Right.
That's a good point, yeah. And some of my boundaries with writing are very simple. I want to write every day. And that is a boundary that, sometimes that doesn't work. But that is one of my goals. And everybody I know knows that that's important. And that's one of the things with Rachel. It took a while, but she's at the point where, have you written today? Have you done anything related to writing today? Go do that.
Yeah.
And then we'll hang out.
Yeah. And you know what? That just really shows, in my opinion, an incredibly beautiful picture of respecting boundaries in a relationship. That is beautiful.
I love my wife.
Yes. She's a really cool gal. I love his wife.
So what are your boundaries?
Well, like I said, I move places. I have a similar boundary in what I will write. But what I keep thinking about is actually more the marketing side of boundaries. There are boundaries that I wish I had that it's too late for me, but I would encourage every author to do. Keep your social media and your personal social media, your author personal separate.
Interesting. Digital boundaries.
Digital boundaries. I'm telling you, when I first started, I had an author, but I never even created my author page on Facebook. Friends created it for me and then eventually turned it over to me. It was really interesting, but I really thought you've got this author page on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people will go to your author page, right? No, they go to your personal page.
Right.
Yeah.
And they friend you. And I had kind of an overnight success story where almost no one knew anything about me. And then bam, I woke up to over 100 requests. Friend requests.
Wow.
Because I became overnight well known, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, what is going on? I was freaking out, and I didn't know how to tell them no.
Can you set up an autoresponder to friend requests?
No.
No.
Not in Facebook, you can't.
Right?
Because that would be nice.
Right? Oh, it would be awesome.
If you don't know me IRL in real life, then like my page.
Yeah, exactly. That would be genius. I should have an app idea run by you guys. But so I accepted them because I'm like, how do I tell readers who don't get it? I couldn't spend all day saying, go to my page instead. It would take me hours. So I started hitting confirm because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that. Well, be prepared. Have an author page. An author profile, not just a page, an author profile as well as your author page, so that you can find a way to make your name not searchable, so that only the people who already know you can,
I think this is going to need to be some separate episodes.
But that is a boundary. I'm telling you, you start it now.
Cool.
Right. I actually had that happen to me where one of our beta readers for last year tried to friend me, and I have definite boundaries on Facebook about who can and cannot friend me.
Cool.
And so I had to let her know, I'm so flattered that you want to be my friend, but because we do not know each other in real life, I cannot accept your friend request. I try to keep this separate. And she totally understood.
Yeah.
She was cool with it.
Most people, I just did not have the time that day. And so I didn't think anything of it because I'm like, I can weed these back out later, right? No, they just kept coming in.
Right. Yeah,
interesting side note, you can have 5,000 friends on your professional profile.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I don't even know how many.
Don't do that, though.
No, don't. Just don't.
We're going to have to talk about this more later.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure we're out of time, right?
Yes, we are out of time.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we actually have a really cool, awesome thing coming up that April's going to tell you about.
Yay! So we are at the end of chapter 1.
Yay! Oh, this is awesome. High fives all around.
Yay! We actually made it to the end of the year.
Score!
And to celebrate that, we are giving away, it's not a contest, people, it's a giveaway.
You misspoke last episode.
Yes, we did. It's a giveaway. So it is 2 packages. One's an e-package. One is a physical package. If you go to our website, we'll have the link down in the show notes. You can sign up, right?
Yeah, you can enter. Just a note: international winners will by default be given the e-package.
Right. Yeah. And that starts when?
That starts in December. No. November.
Starts in November.
Starts November 1st.
Declaring the winner on December 3rd.
That's right.
It ends December 2nd. We'll declare it live on Facebook. 2 p.m. Pacific?
I believe it's 2 p.m. Pacific.
5
p.m. Eastern.
Right.
Yes.
So this is awesome. Thanks, guys, for a great year. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do appreciate all of you.
All right. This has been Alive in Writing. Sometimes that's all you've got, but it's all you really need. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next.